Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Wanted to do a little update here on our boat project. It's been about a week or two. I've gotten a little bit behind. This week I want to talk to you or show you we were able to get the old transom out. It took a cutoff wheel, a Dremel, screwdrivers, elbow grease. It was just old rotted wood, and you'll see I've got some video I'm going to splice in between here so you can kind of see what we were dealing with. The old transom had a aluminum plate that had been welded over, and then the support was welded to that plate and to one of the ribs in the boat, and it took quite a bit of cutting to get all that stuff out. And I'm also going to show you what we decided to do when we bought this boat. The person, either the person we got it from, or the person that they got it from, had either a live well or a bait well in here. And what they did when they took the well out was just left the pump in, and had just taken a piece of tubing and gone from the inlet to the outlet. So any water that ran in would just run right back out. And initially we were going to take it and get it welded, and that was cost prohibitive. It was a little bit more than we really wanted to spend. It would be about a little over half of what we paid for the boat just to get those two holes and a few holes in the back welded, which we've come up with some solutions for that too. So what we've decided to do is just put inlets back in here, and I'm gonna show you what I'll show you what we've kind of the plan for that area. And I think it's going to be a better plan if down the road we decide we need to put a bait well or live well back in here, then we're not going back and re-drilling holes. So I'm gonna stop the video now, and we'll pick back up, and I'll kind of show you our progress. All right, so like I was saying, when we purchased this boat, we had an outlet, one of these one was an inlet, one was an outlet, and he had a pump mounted right here, and he had just taken a piece of tubing and gone from the inlet on the pump back over. If water went in, it was just coming right back into this tube. And initially we were going to get this welded, but it was going to be so much, cost so much to have it done, that what we decided to do was just put a plug back in there, it's basically just an outlet. And so we're going to put this in. I'm just going to put that in there, and then put marine grade sealant around that. And then I went to Lowe's and bought a piece of tubing about the same size as that outlet, and we're just going to put a piece of tubing over it, or off the end of it. And then I bought it's a 3/4 inch plug. Basically it's just a brass plug that will fit in the end of this, and then we'll put a C-clamp around that. And then I'll probably put some marine grade sealant around this plug when I put it in there, but any water that runs out should drain right out when we take the boat out. So I got a Dremel in here and cleaned up around this really well, and on the outside, and I think we're probably going to prime it first, and then once we prime it, we'll put the tubing back in. We're going to do the same thing on both sides. And if that's a problem, if that plug ends up leaking, then what we'll end up doing is probably just taking, just like the guy had it before us, and just put tubing to tubing. That way any water that runs in will just run right back out. So that's kind of our plan for this area. And it kind of left it open if at some point down the road we want to put a live well back in here, then we wouldn't have to, it didn't make much sense either to go ahead and have the holes welded up, and then if at some point we do want a live well, to have to go and drill holes right back in it. So that's kind of where we are with that aspect of the boat. Alright guys, I want to clarify something before I show you what we did to the transom here. I think a few seconds ago when I said we were fixing those holes up front, that we were going to put C-clamps on those hoses. Actually it'll just be hose clamps. There's a difference in just so I'm not confusing anybody. So we'll put hose clamps on both ends of that tubing, one with that plug in the end, and then the other will go to the inlets or outlets on that end. Okay, so let me show you what we did with the transom. So this is the new transom that we put in, and what I was really trying to not have to do, and we did get away with it, was tear this top part off, because if we had done that, I would definitely have had to take it to a welding shop and get it welded again. So what we did was, and you'll see, or you can see in the video of me tearing it apart, it had a brace that ran from here and a metal plate that was over it. So I tore that plate out, and then I cut this at the bottom enough. Of course, getting the old wood, the old wood was rotted, so it wasn't a big deal. We just, you know, it came out in pieces. I did try to save the ends so I could use it to cut the angles for the new transom that went in. And so what I did was, once we got that out, I went and bought a 2x6, I think is what this is. That's just a solid, you know, a solid piece of wood, and we planed it. This is actually 3 different pieces of wood. There was a bolt that runs inside of this compartment right here to the outside of the boat, and so we raised this up a little bit to get it over both ends of it like that. And so this is 3 pieces of wood, two shorter pieces here, and then this longer piece here, and then I just put marine grade sealant in between there, and marine grade sealant on the outside of these bolts. I left these long because I'm not sure if we're gonna probably put a deck over this, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna need these longer if for some reason I ended up putting another piece of wood or a piece of sheet metal or aluminum or something over this. I wanted to leave these long until we got to that part of the build, just in case for some reason I needed these a little bit longer to slide something over it and bolt it down. What I did was, and I'll put this in the description in the comments below. Let me grab it real quick. So, like I said, this is a 2x, I want to say it was a 2x6, maybe a 2x8. But I took this, and the Fire Ant Fishing Guy, if you're building a boat and you haven't seen his YouTube channel, you definitely need to check him out. I'll put a link to his channel in the description below as well. But this is what I use. This has 3 coats of, it's just oil-based semi-gloss enamel. Bear makes it. I just bought a small can because that's all I needed at that point. But I put 3 coats on, covered it, sides, edges, everything. And then on the outside edges of the wood, I took, I think it's 3M 5300 marine grade sealant and covered all the edges. So even if water gets in around there shouldn't be any way that it'll get in. And then of course when we prime the boat, we'll prime this as well. And we plan to do 2 coats of primer and then probably at least 2 coats of paint. So this should be more than covered. It's going to be, I think I've said this before in a video, the boat itself is going to be kept inside the garage. So, you know, wood is going to rot. Eventually everything will, I'm sure. But we're doing the best we can to not have to tear it apart. And down the road, I kind of wanted to do it this way because now down the road, if something does happen and it does rot, we just pull the bolts off and then we can pop the wood out versus having to tear this thing apart every couple of years if the wood rots. We did have to modify the sides a little bit here, but other than that, it went in pretty smoothly. There were already holes in the back here, and we held it up with clamps and drilled it and put the bolts in. So we'll see how that works. I'm not sure what we're going to do as far as bracing it again. I think probably the person that had this had a little bit bigger motor on here than what it is rated for, because they had it braced pretty tightly. It does already, and I'll show you when I bring the camera around to the back side, they did already have a little bit thicker piece of aluminum support on the back of the boat here. So I think we'll probably be okay. We're not planning to put a really large motor on here, probably maybe a 9.9. There's a local marina or boat place here in town that does consignments, and they do like a 10 or 15 point check. I don't know, 20 point check, whatever they tell you, you know. But they check compression and all that stuff, and so if I can find one there at a decent price, then we may pick up a small 9.9. We're not trying to get there super fast. We just need something that you can put gas in to conserve trolling motor battery. But past that, I think this should be fine. But we'll see. If not, if we have to modify it, then we'll do that too. So let me show you the back of the boat, kind of where we are with that. Yeah. So here's the back of the boat. Like I said, we just put carriage bolts in there. And then the white stuff around the edge there is just marine grade sealant. These are the two of the holes that we're left with, and I've already cleaned those up. And I think what we've decided to do is I'm just going to put bolts back in there. What was there was what looked like to me was a mount for a transducer. And so again, I hate to cover a hole up, have that welded up, and then decide we want to put right now the transducer is attached to the bottom of the trolling motor. So I hate to have those holes welded and then decide at some point we want to put the transducer off the back of the boat and then have to turn around and put holes back in it. So I'm just going to put bolts back in there with washers and that same, I think it's 5300. It's a 3M marine grade sealant that gets hard as a rock. And so I'm going to put that in those two spots there. And I think that should take care of that. And then over here, I never really could decide what they were doing here. There's two other holes right here, and they were little bitty, like self-tapping screws in there. So I'm not sure what they had in that particular area, but I found some small bolts that we're going to put in there with screws as well, just in case, and just put marine grade sealant around those and see if that will take care of that. When we leak tested it, it didn't leak a ton. It had a small crack, as you can see we wrote on here when we were getting ready to take it to the welding shop. It had a small crack underneath right there, and it was probably a few drops from that crack. And so what I did there was I took and bought, I don't remember what the brand was, just epoxy, and I mixed that up and then put it in here, and that stuff gets pretty solid as well. So we're going to, before we paint it again, of course, we'll do a leak test, and then we'll make sure everything is staying dry, and then we'll shoot a coat of primer on it. All right, so that's this week's video, kind of update on the boat. Hopefully the next video we have will be us shooting some primer on it. Of course, like everything, when you get ready to do something, the weather turns bad. I think we may have had our first freeze already last night here. It's been a front moving in. It was so windy yesterday, there'd been no way. This shop, we don't have anything set up as far as a paint bay, and I really didn't want to have to go through the trouble of hanging up plastic to paint inside. If we can catch a nice calm day, I think what we're going to do is just get it all prepped and ready and be ready to paint it. So this is Arkansas. I mean, we're going to have another warm day. We deer hunt in short sleeves opening day usually around here. So as soon as we catch a warm day, then we'll go out and shoot a couple coats of primer on it. The primer I bought from Sherwin-Williams, and I'll tell you about that in that next video, but it's called a Chromic, I think. I'm a member of a Tiny Boat Nation on Facebook. I'll put a link to that Facebook group too. If you're interested in building converting a small aluminum boat to like a bass boat style boat, there's tons of information on there. Guys are super helpful. You can ask questions. Nobody treats you like an idiot. Tons of great information on there. So a guy had posted about a particular brand of primer that he used, and so I went to my local Sherwin-Williams, and they had it. The only bad thing, you had to buy a gallon, which is a 14-foot boat. You probably shoot this boat 20 times with a gallon of that primer, but it's a marine or a industrial grade primer. There happened to be a professional painter in the store when I was there, and he said it should work well. The only problem is that it does take a little while to dry. and it was so windy yesterday. He said I wouldn't try to do it today unless you want to have, you know, a ton of crap on your stuck to your boat with as much wind as blowing out there. So yeah, that's kind of where we are. Once we get a couple coats of primer and paint on here, then we'll start decking it out. Probably we're going to insulate the floor, and then we'll get a couple sheets of plywood and we're going to put a floor in it, and then build some casting decks. And hopefully, I'd like to try to fish out of this thing some in the winter if we can get to that point. If not, then we'll be looking at spring, or right about the time spring rolls around, we'll be ready for the crappie and bass and stuff when they start spawning. So that's this week's video. If you want to follow the progress, hit the subscribe button. If you want to see the start of the project, I'll post, you should see tabs pop up on both sides of this video here in just a few seconds after I sign off, and you can see kind of what we started with and kind of where we've come. Once we get some paint on it, I think it should go pretty quick. I'm still up in the air about one of the things that people kind of go back and forth in that Facebook group about is framing in the boat. You know, the transom, I kind of had to go with wood. I really didn't have a choice, but you can do wood, or if you can find right angle aluminum, you can frame for your decking with that. And I'll just have to call around and see what kind of price I can get on right angle. I don't know. I know at Lowe's and Home Depot and those kinds of places it's super expensive, but I think if you can find a metal yard that deals strictly with aluminum and steel and stuff, you might be able to get it. And we don't need a lot. We just need maybe 50 or 60 feet probably. And so hopefully that shouldn't be too expensive, and then we'll frame with that, and then the only wood we'll have to worry about. And of course we'll go back over any wood we put in here. I was pretty satisfied with this oil-based stuff from Bear. You know, it's oil-based. It takes it a long time to dry, so it's like, you know, put a coat on, let it dry for a day, flip it over, put a coat on, let it dry for a day. But I mean, it puts a pretty hard shell on this wood. So we're probably any wood related product that's going to go in here, we're definitely going to put that on. Even though we're going to carpet the decking, I think we're still going to probably put a couple of coats on that, and then use that marine gray, that 3M. I want to say it's 5300. I'll put the actual product link in the description below. But any wood edges that we're gonna put that enamel on, and I'll take and put that 5300 3M marine grade sealant around it too, just to ensure that no water seeps into it. So I'm going to sign off for this video, and then hopefully the next video you'll see will be either shooting some paint, or we will have finished painting it. So if you have any questions about the project, anything we've used or done, drop it in the comments below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks.